The film begins in New York in a building called the Millennium Building, which has 102 floors and 73 elevators. On the roof, the guards Andy and Gary are watching the neighbors through a telescope. They are having a naughty party. When the rain started to fall, the guards returned inside before the lightning caused the electricity to go out. Andy and Gary went to the bathroom. He noticed that his watch was doing strange things at the same time that the elevator was opening. Outside, thunder was striking, and Gary was trying to open the elevator door. He did not want to keep it open. Suddenly, his flashlight turned on by itself, and when he tried to turn it off, the door began to tremble along with his hand. At the same moment, the door was locked, and Andy heard Gary. He screamed happily and ran to find Gary, whose flashlight was broken, and he looked at the elevator and was afraid of him. Andy said that this was empty talk and Gary had been forced to go with him on the second day. A group of pregnant women had finished a yoga class and entered the elevator. They noticed that he was going down more quickly than normal. Suddenly, the elevator stopped. The guards heard the alarm bell and noticed that this was the second time this week, but they had never found anything wrong with the elevator. And in a second, the alarm went silent, and the guards thought that the elevator had started again, so they did not complete maintenance. But the elevator was still standing, and when the women tried to press the emergency buttons or call the phone, nothing happened. Their phones were dead. There was also a network, so they had to wait. At this time, the guards received a call from a second tenant saying that the elevator was not working, which surprised them because the pace and maintenance of their computer was good. And in the elevator, the women began to lose their patience because the weather was very hot and difficult to breathe. When maintenance arrived, the guards cut off the electricity so that the technicians could open it. The door, but not even the key, was of no use at this time. The women accidentally turned on the alarm very loud, and at least two of them started to have a shot. And in a few minutes, all of the women felt the shot together, and one of them actually started to give birth. The maintenance team announced that the door was stuck, and a man arrived with a hammer, wanting to help because one of these women, who was his wife, the technician told him that this was very dangerous and tried to stop him, so he choked him on the ground. At this time, the elevator began to go down very quickly, even though the electricity was still cut off. When the elevator arrived, the guards began to open it and were surprised that there were pipes inside at this time. The technicians, Jeff and Mark, stopped. They were in a cafeteria for breakfast, and Mark called out to a man with bad taste because he was treating the waiter. The man responded by hitting him and throwing him on a table, and their breakfast was interrupted when they received a call from the manager telling them to go to Millennium Building to fix the elevator at the same time. The reporter, Jennifer, followed Millennium Building to cover an accident. The pregnant women who were being taken in the ambulance. Jennifer tried to ask the mothers questions, but the police prevented her. When Mark and Jeff arrived, they talked about the problems with the elevator, and Director Milligan wanted them to fix them quickly because he was afraid that Mark and Jeff's cases would be filed against them. They took the engine room on the roof, and while the two were examining the engine, they were talking. About the mechanic, he got rid of himself. The man thought that the engine might have been struck by lightning, but Jeff considered this idea ridiculous. After a few hours, the two of them finished and checked everything, and there was nothing wrong with them. They walked away at that time. A blind man was at the hairdresser, and the one who had cut his hair green turned out to be taking advantage of his blindness, so that he could treat Badia at ease. This was her revenge when he and his guide dog rode the elevator. He chose to go down, but the elevator started to come out and did not stop until he reached the 91st floor, which is still under construction and empty, meaning that no one can press the button. This man pressed many buttons, but the elevator was not there. FIDA, so they went out. The door was locked all the time, and the elevator came down from someone else. The man asked for a second elevator, and whoever made the dog bark, the elevator came out very quickly, and when the screen announced floor 91, the door opened, but there was no elevator. The dog barked to warn its owner, and the one who took a step fell and was able to catch himself on the edge, and the dog tried to pull him. Outside, but its weight was very heavy, the two of them fell into the elevator shaft, and at night on the 44th floor, Andy and Gary were stealing whiskey, and when they received a call from the surveillance cameras, their colleagues explained to them that the elevator was arriving quickly and that there was supposed to be no one in the building at that time. Finally, the elevator stopped and opened the door, but no one came out. Gary and Andy tried to see what was happening, but Gary accidentally knocked into a statue, and the noise made the elevator close the door and walk away. The two of them went downstairs and found the elevator open again on the 4th floor, but it was locked all the time. When he approached it, the small screen announced that he was returning to the 44th floor, but when Gary's searchlight began to malfunction. The door opened without the elevator being on. Andy arrived. He entered to look and found the blind man's dog dead hanging on a metal display. At this time, the door was locked and Andy grabbed him by the neck. Gary tried to help him, but the door was hanging. Suddenly, the elevator box began to descend, and Andy was pushed under, until he cut his throat on the edge. And the next day, the Millennium Building closed all the elevators. And because of it, hundreds of tourists left outside. The press was forbidden from entering, and the police refused to share any information. Milligan held a meeting with the investigator in charge of the matter, who explained that they had checked the surveillance cameras, but they were unable to find any intruders in the building, Mark and Jeff. They took me to see the elevators, but Mark had a headache and went back to the bathroom. Suddenly, he found Jennifer, who was disguised as a cleaning lady, but Mark knew that she was a reporter. She took a picture of him and asked him some questions, but Mark refused to answer. When he came out of the bathroom, Jennifer tried to go after him, but the guards kicked her out. After that, Mark and Jeff went to Milligan and told him that they had not been able to find anything. With Detective Milligan's support, he announced that they would open the prisons again. The next day, when Mark went to work, all of his friends made fun of him because of something in the newspaper. Mark got confused and was taken to the principal's office, who was angry because the journal had printed a picture. Mark, with the title provocative, Jennifer quoted a sarcastic comment from Mark about the elevators and the police now considering him a suspect. Mark was also shocked when he found out that a new partner had been appointed for him. When he looked out the window, he saw Jeff arguing with a scientist named Gunther Mark. He asked his new partner about the mechanic who had killed himself and found out that he was Jeff's partner in the city. Two friends were riding on wheels without caring that they were hitting people or cars. Finally, they arrived at the Millennium Building garage. One of them accidentally knocked over a car, and the other kept walking. The man who tripped could see his wounds. At this time, all the wipers in the cars started moving. At the same time, a strong light opened, and the man was sucked inside. After a minute, we saw him on the 86th floor. The body flew into the room, broke the window, and came back over the fence. Then it fell from the building and died when it fell on the ground. Mark saw the incident on the news and went to Millennium Building at the same time, but no one allowed it. He entered, and on his way back, he saw Jennifer with the other two reporters and went after her until she apologized for her article. She shared details about the incident and explained that the police thought that the man jumped to kill himself, but she thought that there might be a dirty game in the lobby, a young girl who was able to escape from it. The nursery was sitting playing in front of the elevators. Suddenly, the elevator door opened, and when the girl approached, it locked it along and opened a second elevator door. This continued for a while, and the girl was having fun as she ran from one door to the other. When the elevator was in the middle, the elevator box opened and it came out a little, leaving a void underneath it, and the girl looked inside. At this time, the school and my school. Jean heard her scream and went to the lobby below to see it. Fortunately, the girl was fine, but her bride was destroyed. When Milligan looked at the elevator, he found his bride's armor hanging in the door. At night, Mark was studying the plans for the elevator in the house, and he heard a voice outside and noticed a shadow behind the door. He banged on the door with a bat and opened it, and found Jennifer, she brought him a video so he could see it. It was a security recording that explained the incident involving the skater. Mark thought that this proved that the man had killed himself, but Jennifer returned the video to explain the timings. The elevator only took 2 seconds to go from the garage to the 86th floor, which is impossible to happen in a normal situation. Mark finally agreed that something strange was happening, and he took Jennifer to visit Jeff, who did not answer his phone. Jennifer asked him to watch the video, but Jeff went crazy and shouted at them and walked away. This was not his normal behavior. When his wife left the house, she confirmed that Jeff had been strange lately. Jennifer and Mark walked and decided to have dinner together, and Jennifer confessed. She thinks that the elevator's haunted, and after dinner, they went to Jennifer's office and used her computer to search for information about Gunther, who designed the elevators for the company. It turns out that he was working for the Cadell Company, which was closed after investigations into bribery and illegal use of government assets. A second article revealed that the company was working with the Army is trying to manufacture weapons at this time. Joffer's colleague Chip passed by next to them and noticed the article he was reading, so he shared the information he knew. The Codal company was exposed to problems due to the manufacture of biochips, which are computer chips built on living tissue. They built a computer on the brains of dolphins, which developed their brains on their own, and the chips are now able to. It produces itself, so the computer has grown and behaves like a living being, but no one knows what happened to it. A young man did not talk about Gunther, but he agreed to help them search for information. On their way home, Jennifer told Mark that she remembered that the elevator was haunted. The next day, Milligan rode the elevator, and a drop of blood fell on his shoulder when he looked up. He found the hatch open, and suddenly the elevator stopped, and Jeff's body fell out of the hole. Millie Jean was terrified and crawled outside, but after a while, other employees saw the body. Marky received a call with the bad news, so he quickly moved with Jennifer to get details about our shock. Gunnar was sitting on the table with Milligan, the investigator, and Mark's manager. Mark M. investigated. Explanation. The dead man was a suspect, and now they are certain that he was involved in all the incidents. He also claimed that the police had received a message from the killer. Mark knew that he was lying. When Jennifer tried to ask Gunter about the vital tests, he stopped her because he thought that their information about the matter would make them appear as suspects as well. The two walked from the building, and Mark believed that the police are helping Milligan. He is covering up everything. He also told Jennifer about Jeff's ex-partner and told her that he began to think that the story of his death to himself was a lie. After that, they went to Jeff's house to look for evidence, but the police had taken everything. His wife said that he died in the same way that his partner died, and the one who confirmed that the story that he did this to himself was a lie. After that, Jennifer and Mark went to the house of Jeff's partner's widow, but she did not open the door, so Jane opened it with a pin. When the two entered, they found a strange swimming pool specialized for the dead man. The widow agreed to talk to the other and said her husband was killed when they left him bleeding inside the building for 3 days. She remembers that his soul is still there and will benefit from his right. In the Millennium Building, a large group of people rode the elevator, and the one who started to go out very quickly did not stop in any floor of the one they had chosen. All the people started crying and screaming in panic, and one of the children but himself, and suddenly the ground opened, and a group of people fell and died, and some of them were able to catch themselves. But the elevator was coming out very quickly, and one after the other began to fall. The elevator did not stop, and in the end it came out of the ceiling and destroyed half of the engine room. The accident reached the White House, and the president appeared in a press conference and said that all the elevator deaths were a terrorist act. At the same time, the head of the elevator company met with Gunter and told him that since he created this monster, it is now his responsibility to kill him. We returned to the Millennium Building, and the police were showing up more than usual as part of an official operation. Jennifer arrived in Jeff's car, and Mark hid behind him and parked the car in front of him. The building went out and disguised itself as a company employee delivering elevator-related materials for investigation, but the police still wanted to search the car. At this time, Jennifer received a call from Al Chib, who told her that the biometric strips were still an ongoing project and that they were now using humans instead of animals. The police were tired of Jennifer, and she was trying to buy time. He was angry, and they ended the call before they locked him in a room. At this time, Mark got out of the car without anyone seeing him and entered the building from under a police car. At the time when the police were putting boxes of ammunition and explosives, Mark moved carefully and opened the service elevator with his key and jumped on the box before the police did. He uses the elevator to reach the last floor. When the path became clear, Mark went up the stairs and dodged a few police officers before entering the engine room. There he used his second key to activate one of the main elevators that the guards saw on the main computer. After he took the flashlight, Mark returned to the last floor and entered the elevator. Before the police saw him at first, nothing happened. But when Mark touched the opening, the elevator began to go down very quickly. Using the buttons was of no use, and Mark made a lock on the elevator to finally stop it. After that, Mark went up to the elevator and used the buttons there to control it. He went up a few turns and stopped. When the elevator noticed a mysterious message on the wall written in blood, Mark looked inside a hole and was surprised when a bird flew out of it, but there was nothing else, so he started to go out on the elevator. Then, after a few turns, he found a strange white substance in a second hole and sparks on the wires above. And when he tried to go above the police, he reached the engine room. The elevator was closed, and now Mark has no choice but to go up with the wires. He discovered a room in the wall and opened it with force. What made the box in the engine room shake and sparks came out inside the room. He discovered the large vital chip that illuminated, and he did not think much before stabbing it a lot. At the same time, the box in the engine room started and started. He took down the vital chip and still didn't catch it. Mark continued to stab her. The police used explosives to blow up the elevator door, and they began to enter, wanting to catch Mark. The firebox was approaching, so Marks did not walk. Most of the officers were able to get out quickly, but one of them was on his heels and his legs remained hanging on the ladder. The box cut his body in two on its way. Underneath, Mark prepared himself to escape, but a second elevator came out and left wires being damaged around his legs, so he dragged with him using all his strength. Mark was able to undo the wires and jump before the elevator hit the engine room. Debris began to fall, and Mark was forced to hide under his roof in order to survive. Meanwhile, Gunnar arrived at the building and forgave him. He entered because he had a special permit. The head of the operation recognized him from the camera and discovered that he had no connection to terrorists at that time. Jennifer entered the hatches to escape from the room, and Mark left the elevator and stole a weapon from the police boxes. After that, he went to the 65th floor and opened the elevator door to find the vital chip. The second one was prepared. He wanted to shoot, but Gunther appeared next to him with Mark's weapon. He quickly pulled the weapon from him, and they started fighting, and Gunnar shoved Mark into the elevator bar. Gunnar was going to win the fight, but Jennifer cut them off and grabbed the weapon, and he was forced to surrender. Mark took advantage of the opportunity to take the officer's weapon again, but Gunther blocked the door to protect his invention. At this time, the police arrived and Jent took advantage of the opportunity to hold Jennifer hostage. She bit his hand to free herself, and when Gunther was left alone, the elevator wires began to move like Boot's sister in order to catch him, drag, and kill him. Mark's man was entangled in the wires, so Jennifer threw the weapon at him, and he used it to destroy the vital chip. Finally, the explosion. Mark returned in the corridor and the wires lay down Gunnar's body. After a while, Jennifer went to collect Mark from the hospital. When he recovered, they took the elevator, and I was surprised when it stopped suddenly. But Mark pressed the emergency button by mistake. This is the end of the movie, and we will meet in a new summary. Thank you for watching.